So you got with Billy, and I guess, and was Mike Varney involved in the Mr. Big transition or formation?
In one way, because we, Billy and I started jamming together, or at least talking about it. And I'm actually not sure of the timeline, because I thought I was the first one. But then, in later interviews, we'd be doing an interview in Japan or something, and then Billy would tell the story of the founding of the band. He's like, "Oh, I talked to Eric first." It was like, "Really?" I thought, so I don't know who talked to who, but I know that Billy wanted to find a singer, and he contacted Mike Varney, and Mike said, "Oh, there's this guy Eric Martin. He lives in they knew each other because they both lived in the Bay Area, and Billy listened to some of Eric's singing, and I had a couple of Eric's records already. I thought he was great, so that seemed to make sense, and it did."
Absolutely. And I've read before on To Be With You, it was a little bit of a departure from, obviously you and Billy Sheehan and the kind of band that you came from, for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about, the kind of the thrill ride that was To Be With You? Because not too many people on this planet get to have a #1 smash hit like that and get that ride.
Yeah, that was, well, I would say with my guitar playing, I had been teaching at GIT, but had been in Racer X, and had been culminating to this sort of shred mountaintop. And then I got to the top and looked around and went I kind of missed the Beatles, because that was the stuff I grew up with. I didn't grow up. I mean, I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, but really before that, it was all pop music. And I was into the Beatles, Elton John, the pop music that was on the radio. And then later on, I got into Zeppelin, and then, by the time I heard Van Halen, I was, I'd been listening to music for so long that it was, I loved it. It was exciting. It was my favorite thing, but it wasn't the only thing. I just had this foundation of melody and pop songwriting, and if you work in a restaurant and you cook the same thing every day, after a while you start to crave a different flavor, and no matter how good it is. And so I started to sort of rediscover the Beatles stuff, the old Beach Boys catalog, Todd Rundgren, and just I started to learn piano, and not only the piano itself, but how to play piano parts on guitar and the kind of chords that piano players use. And it really it made me just want more melody in our songs.
You had a moment at a Todd Rundgren concert, I believe, that you had told me about that kind of changed you a bit because
Oh man, yeah. When I saw him live, I was sobbing and just going what? Why is this happening? I've never been this emotionally affected at a show, and it wasn't. The guitar player was great, but it wasn't the guitar playing that was doing it. It was the song and the singing and the dynamics and all this other stuff. And I thought, I got to pay attention to that because it's powerful. Yeah. So the song To Be With You, I didn't write it, but one day I was driving around with Eric, and he said he knew that I liked the Beatles and that kind of stuff. So he said, "Oh, I got this song. It's kind of Beatley." He said, "Check this out." And he put in the cassette, and I heard it, and I thought, "Oh, I love that song. That's great." And some time went by, and I couldn't get the song out of my head. And so finally I wrote, or I called Eric, that was the days of the phone, and I said, "Man, Eric, that song you played me, the kind of Beatley one, can you send me a cassette of that?" And so he sent it down, and it was my job to make the rehearsal tapes. We'd rehearse, and I always set up all the mics and made tapes of our rehearsals. Then I would add the dual cassette dubbing deck, and I'd make a cassette for everybody so everybody could remember the songs. Right. And at the end, I put To Be With You, and I didn't tell anybody. And of course, Eric knew the song already, but Billy and Pat hadn't heard it. And I just put it on there and didn't say a word. And a couple hours later, after I gave everybody the cassette, my phone starts ringing, and Billy's like, "What's that song at the end? It's amazing." And said, Pat called me up, "What's that song? It's unbelievable." And so, even though I think the world saw us as metal shredders or whatever, we all had that part of us that loved a good song. And I think that the thing that was a really nice surprise is that when Billy formed the band, I think primarily he was looking for let's get a great singer and guys that can play really well. But it turned out all of us could sing harmonies pretty well. And I remember when we did we did my tune, Green Tinted 60s Mind, and had a lot of harmonies, and we played it for our manager. And our manager was this guy named Herbie Herbert, and he was the manager of Journey. And Journey has these amazing vocal harmonies in all their songs. And so Herbie listens to Green Tinted, and he goes, what are you guys going to do live? And we're like, we'll sing it. He's like, you guys can sing that? He's like, that's us,
Yeah.
He had no idea we could sing, and in a way we didn't either. But we just sort of, you sing? Oh, you do too. And really that became, as the band evolved, that kind of became the most enjoyable part of Mr. Big. Was like, everybody wants to hear us do the whittly whittly, but I always enjoyed our because it was when four people sing together. That it really connects you. It really feels great. And really, growing up as a Beatle fan, that's kind of what my original hope was. But I could never sing or write well enough, early on. And I was always just a better guitar player.
Right. When you got done, did you and the people around go, we've got it? This is going to catapult us and do something different? Did you just right away? Did you know? I
was pretty excited. Yeah. I remember just driving to the recording studio. It was the California dream. I had a vintage '62 T-Bird, windows down, driving to the pro recording studio, recording Green Tinted and To Be With You, and just going this is awesome. And I remember actually after it was finished, the first person I played it for was John Alderetti, the bass player of Racer X, because we were still good friends.
Right.
And we just those were the days where you sit in your car. And he was in the passenger seat, I was in the driver's seat, and we just, had a listening party, listened to the whole thing from beginning to end. And at the end, he just looked at me and went like, man, that's going to be a smash, and he was right. It was our biggest record. The melody was like.
I have to applaud for that. Everybody, Mr. Paul Gilbert, part 1. Part 2 coming up next week. We're going to dive down into Iona Building. We're going to tell you guys all about it. Make sure you come on back. Paul, thank you so much. We will see you next week, and we'll finish this thing up.
Right on.